federal government. Let's bring in the front bench to talk about the implications of that. Elliot Hughes is a political commentator and senior associate with Summa Strategies. He's a former senior advisor to Liberal finance and defence ministers as well. Former Alberta MLA and cabinet minister Gary Mar is here. He's the president and CEO of the Canada West Foundation. Anne McGrath is national director of the NDP, and the Toronto Star's Queen's Park bureau chief Rob Benzie is with us. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. Rob, I'll start with you. What were your thoughts on the Prime Minister's comments? I said off the top of the show, he normally stops for just a brief amount of time. He stopped for an extended amount of time today, and it was probably some of the more pronounced things I've heard him say in the last month on this war.
I think I agree, Vassy. It was the lengthiest statement he's made, I think, since October 7th, frankly. And I think it was timely. In fact, he might have been better if he'd said it a few days ago. I think what he was saying is that everyone needs to take a chill pill in Canada. I mean, we've seen these awful attacks on places of worship. We have anti-Semitic. Talk to your Jewish friends. I mean, they are all feeling scared. A friend of mine was just saying he's telling his kids to hide their Star of David medallions and stuff like when they go on the subway. I mean, this is just not Canada. I think the Prime Minister speaks for all of us when he says that, or most of us. The problem is in this day and age of social media where everyone is amplifying their views, some of which are pretty extreme, and you get a lot of, that gets magnified by those of us in the mainstream media, and then it looks like the country is at a tether. And I'm not sure that it is, but I think that it is important that our political leaders say, look, everyone needs to cool it. This is Canada. And frankly, you can have all the protests you want here. They're not going to affect the situation in Gaza. They're not going to affect the situation in Israel.
Yeah, I think that social media often, Gary, exacerbates things, but I do think also from conversations, even the one I had with Anthony Housefather tonight, people are feeling it in a different way in public as well, right? Like they do feel it's at a level that it wasn't at before. How important do you think it is for Canadians to hear from their political leaders on that?
Well, first of all, let me say, I agree with what the Prime Minister had to say on this subject. And like Mr. Benzie, I mean, I've talked to Jewish friends, and they'll tell you that if you go to a church, nobody thinks twice about walking into a church. But go into a synagogue where you might have 2 or 3 levels of security before you get into a synagogue, it's quite a different set of circumstances. And I agree with the Prime Minister when he says this is not who we are as Canadians. Now, how you deal with it is quite a different matter. But I suppose it starts with our leadership here in Canada from all parties talking about how we need to deal with this circumstances and how, as the Prime Minister says, it's not acceptable. But how you go about doing that remains to be seen. It's a very difficult thing, exacerbated by what we see on social media.
Yeah, there's no doubt, and it's all very challenging. I do think, though, for the most part, and you can tell me if you have a different view, like Anthony Housefather said, there are people even within various caucuses who have very different views, who may never, ever agree on this issue, but they have managed to stay pretty civil about it.
Yeah, I think that you can take some part in a few things. One is that poll. I think it shows that there is an overwhelming desire amongst the Canadian population for peaceful settlement, for there to be a road towards peace. And so I think that that's very good. I think it's important that our political leaders speak out about the rise in anti-Semitic and anti-Muslim sentiment, and which is very small. It is small, but it is very visible right now, and it is increasing in scope for sure. So it's important to speak out against those. And I think also the fact that there were 2 unanimous consent motions in Parliament today, I think fairly reasonable ones that really were very, very balanced. I think that that's good as well. So I think that there's a lot to kind of hang your hat on in terms of hope. But at the same time, it is incredibly important that we do say what's happening to Jewish Canadians, Muslim Canadians, and to be very, very forceful in opposition to that, and to really take, I think that there is a lot of fear in communities right now about things like Gary was talking about going into a synagogue, going into a gurdwara, going into a mosque. Right now, I think is a pretty terrifying time for a lot of Canadians. And then, of course, there are people who have families, either who are hostages of Hamas in Gaza, or who are in Gaza trying to get out. And that's got to be top, the very top issue for the Canadian government.
Well, I think also what Anne's kind of comments inform, Elliot, is that it is not happening here, but is being felt very acutely here by so many different Canadians for a variety of different reasons. And I think that in turn informs the impetus for the government and for really political leaders of all political stripes to talk about it.
Yeah, and Canada's not the only place we're seeing this. I mean, we're seeing these terrible acts and terrible sort of outbursts happen all around the world, and it just speaks to how flat the world's become in many ways, and how quickly and how impactful some of these events can be. And I would just echo some of the comments made from the others. I think it's really important that political leaders of all stripes speak out, against what we're seeing in Canada. I think it's important for them to come together and to try and lower the temperature in the House of Parliament, sort of the House of the people, and to show and to really be these role models for other Canadians, to show that, look, we can disagree on things, and there are some very visceral disagreements around this issue, but that we can do it in a civil way. I think the Prime Minister was right in saying, look, if we can't deal with this in Canada, where else on earth can we deal with it? Canada is diverse. We should be proud of that diversity. And we should, be able to, disagree, but disagree civilly. That's a challenging situation, or a challenging thing to do with the situation that we see unfolding in Israel and their war against Hamas. But I think it's very incumbent on politicians, as we've all said, to really step up. And I think the Prime Minister's comments today were important. I think they were on point. I think that's kind of the Prime Minister at his best in many ways, not to make this a political conversation, but I think it sort of shows, look, he's been in the role for 8 years. He can handle these. He's speaking with empathy and seriousness about these issues. And I think in many ways, he reflected how a majority of Canadians really feel about these things.